think about it. You're programming an intelligence, right? So imagine how many lines of code it would be if you program the intelligence to notice an association between a behavior and immorality. Okay? So it just has to notice when there's a correlation, when these two things often enough happen together. Okay. So you need a line, whatever, you need a set of code for the machine to notice the co-occurrence of a thing and a negative thing. Okay, in this case, a behavior and an immoral or societally condemned thing, like feeling, okay? Then you have the machine learn that this is that, okay? That this behavior is immoral. Then you have the machine avoid and condemn that behavior, right? That's that. So compare that code, the code that says, so compare that code. Now let's do it just once more really quickly. That associates thing with harm or moral judgment of harm, or negative moral judgment. So thing, action, with either harmful consequence or negative moral judgment from others. Okay, then go like this. Say, okay, so then this thing is a harmful thing, because I've seen an association with it and harm. This thing is a harmful thing, and a thing that deserves negative moral judgment. Okay? So now I will negatively morally judge that thing, and avoid it because it causes harm. Now, imagine that compared to a machine that's programmed to notice an association between a thing and a negative consequence. Then, pay attention to that thing to notice its association or co-occurrence with a positive consequence. Then, create the rule that this thing is either positive or negative, depending on the following conditions. And then, when confronted with that thing, consider those conditions to determine whether or not it's a good thing or a thing that deserves your scorn. Which machine do you think would, first of all, could survive with without unlimited food intake, glucose? It would be the first one. And then second thing, which of those machines would better survive? Even if we suppose that they had unlimited food processing and whatever. Well, the second one, how much time is that dude gonna spend in each case by case of figuring out whether this is a time where the thing is a negative thing or a positive thing? You know, this person has unlimited food. Do they have energy to do these considerations? Do they have unlimited time to procure this unlimited food, to consume this unlimited food? I don't know. That seems like a really, really complicated system. If I were the designer of species, of the first intelligent species on a planet, if I were Mother Nature going like this, and then just whatever made it, I think what you would see is the first thing that can write would be the thing that took that thing that had that simpler system of when I notice a co-occurrence between a thing and a negative thing, then that means that that thing is negative, and I will avoid it and condemn it. Which means that, well, this is, okay, so this will just be my introduction. There you go. Yeah, so that's it. And I think that principle explains a lot. I think it explains a lot. Explains why in moral and character judgments, although it often should make a difference, the truth of the conditions in determining whether or not the behavior was good or bad, it should actually matter what the facts were. But gosh, our species was not forced to have that capacity. Well, it didn't evolve to run that program for everything, right? But absolutely, that process does exist in the brain, just got a few cobwebs on it. If we know that we are brains, and we know that we don't by default run that program of, what are the facts, and we know why, because it's not feasible to run that program every time. Okay, but we should have certain cue words when we're interacting with each other, when we want to ask someone, hey, can you run that second check? The one that actually checks the information involved, that doesn't just follow the association to condemnation. And then we should be humble enough to know that we are not these thinking machines, that we don't really think, that we are just machines. And we should say, okay, I'm not going to assume that my first reaction to that actually considered all of the important information. I think that that's just a thing that sometimes coincides with harm. And so, of course, yeah, my system 1 was boom. Okay, now engaging system 2. So what would be the facts involved what are the specific facts involved? And can you explain to me why you think that they have bearing or should have bearing on the judgment? Oh yeah, okay. Oh, like the memory problems thing. Oh right, yeah, that is bad if she doesn't have memory problems. Then that is bad. Oh, but if she actually does have memory problems, okay, then in that instance it may have been true, and oh boy, my system 1's fighting me on this. And then you say, no, it's an asshole thing. Oh gosh, now my system 2's fighting me on this because you spoke as system 1. But the only way to get the brain to appropriately engage its system 2 processes is for it to know that it's a brain typically running system 1 processes. Yeah, okay, cool. Truth does not matter in our moral or character evaluations, which is a really scary thing and really not in line with some of our values, but also a really natural thing, because truth and facts are complicated, hard to know, and sometimes changing, or they'll change on in different cases. And when we are judging a character, the morality of someone, it needs to be a simpler process. And so I'm thinking of a few different things that relate and that exemplify what I'm talking about. One example is if a child or someone who more easily shares what they're thinking says, oh, that shirt is ugly, or that person is short, or whatever, they will be hushed and told that, you can't say that. And then I've got this image in my head of the person responding, but it's true. And then of the parent, let's say if it's a kid, is saying, yeah, but, you can't say that. I also think of in television and movies how I'm usually very confused, or I'm not convinced that the bad guy is the bad guy until quite late in the movie, when all of a sudden he does something terrible or reveals his evil smile. But leading up to that point, I'm not convinced that he's the bad guy when he's saying, like, oh, we have to take this drastic measure because otherwise everyone will die. I'm wondering, okay, is that true? Because if that's true, then why the hell is the hero interfering, right? There are so many bad guys who their objective, their whatever, is maybe to cause some harm in order to prevent greater harm. And just the asshole characters always like talking about the numbers and so on. And I'm over there wondering, I know that these guys are supposed to be the asshole because how they keep looking at the other characters and how creepy they are. But like if it's true that we need to, for instance, I don't know what an example is. We need to set off the bomb here where it's going to kill 5 people before it gets to the city and where it's going to kill a whole bunch of people. I don't know. And then some asshole, like, hero associate is, like, who maybe has been competing, who we're going to find is actually a traitor, blah, blah, blah. He's like, blow the bomb in this smaller city. And the hero's like, no, we have to find another way. And just saying, hey, let's kill these people now, makes him an asshole, even if it's actually true that it is the only method to save a whole bunch of other people. And that's because we are simple. The brain is simple, and the brain is simple and also has lots of conviction when it comes to questions like this. Why we evolved with that conviction makes sense, because, you know, it had to be serious. We had to take these rules seriously as a social species of not causing harm, for instance. And we certainly weren't smart enough to be able to actually assess the harm on like a case-by-case situation, just automatically assess the harm, the consequences of any harm done. So we just have this rule called the inaction bias, which is do no harm. Even if, I mean, it's not part of the rule, but when that rule manifests, often it manifests in situations even where doing no harm will actually cause greater harm, but it's just not, it's going to be indirectly. It's why people struggle with the trolley dilemma. The answer, I think, if you ask me, hey, what should we do? It's going down a track, it's about to kill 5 people. You can pull this lever and it'll go down this other track and kill 1 person. I go, oh shit, pull the lever. You tell me it's going down a track, it's going to kill 5 people, but there's a fat man on a bridge who can stop it. And assuming I have no information about any of the 6 people, I would hope that I would do the moral thing, which is to push the man. Even though a part of me would be screaming not to, because we are programmed to do no harm. I just hope that the other part of me that has a little bit more sense about the numbers and about the truth of the matter would intervene. But you see, here's the main thing that I was thinking about that got me thinking of that, talking about this. If I'm having a conversation, let's say the year is, when was Darwin? In the end of the 18th century? No, end of the 19th? Oh yeah, so he was 19th century. Alright, so not even the end. The middle of the 19th century, he's doing his great stuff. And anyway, we can imagine it's 1930. Darwin's been dead for 50 years. All the scientists are all like, whoa, this is great. It's starting to be taught in schools or whatever, I don't know. And I'm having a conversation with someone, and they say, fuck, And they say, oh, creation. And I go, actually, the world's been around a lot longer because we learned this stuff about deep time. And since we found out about deep time, then Darwin came around and was like, actually, this is really slow process of life. You would find it absurd if the creationist was then like, yo, stop being so arrogant, thinking you have all the answers, blah, 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 right? You wouldn't say that the Darwinist had just violated any character or moral rules by being a bit imposing with his evolution thing. Even if he continues, goes, no, what you're saying is actually incorrect. This is what we've learned. You wouldn't think that he was being imposing. You'd think that the creationist was silly. And that's because evolution, especially if you're watching this video, is just one of the simplest known truths. And so in that case, when it's that obvious, then yes, I guess whether or not it's true does make an example in our evaluation of that person who's imposing. We don't think that they're an asshole or whatever, because what they're saying is true, and that makes a difference. Well, so we're able to, so when we know something, and that doesn't mean that like we know it here, but that we hear enough that it is true, well then yes, that plays a role. But often, things aren't that clear, right? Especially in the conversations I have. So often, the person actually has no information one way or the other about what I'm talking about. And in the process, I'm in the process of presenting the research that shows what they are, our brain. And, maybe in 100 years, it'll be so obvious that brains are brains that I will be vindicated. But for now, I am violating a bunch of rules because the fact that I have information that's just too nuanced to take into consideration when considering. Alright, fuck this video. I'm just realizing that how pervasive, or how in my brain, in everybody's brain, save for a few crystal clear situations, unless the truth is absolute and absolutely felt, it is not considered in a character evaluation thing. And so here's the final example I'll give. There's a lot of stuff in like gaslighting or just in manipulation in general, in relationships in general. Things that you just cannot say regardless of whether it is true or not. Or things that will be seen as bad regardless of whether they are true or not. We will say whether someone is good or bad based on whether they have certain things in common. Alright, so here's an example. No, fuck this video. And that's why it explains so much about why it never mattered what the truth was. Of course not. That was never part of the calculation. That's our programming just does not include that unless it's overwhelmed by it. Otherwise, so it takes a long time, or the threshold is super high for the it is true or untrue voice to factor into the judgment. Like, for instance, I dated a woman that actually had memory problems, and it was like the craziest thing. Sometimes to like, there was just a thing that she just forgot happened. And we were only together like, a few months. And so sometimes there would actually be an argument where I had told her something and we're arguing about because she thinks I didn't tell her. And I wanted to say, that you have memory problems. And even just saying it right now, it hurt to say. You can't fucking say that. And if she ever told anybody, yeah, but sometimes we'd be arguing and I would feel like, he didn't let me know that he had. No, that's not a good example. What is an actual, what was it? I don't fucking remember. I guess, and we all do. But nothing's coming to mind for her memory problems. This was, I don't think about it often. But if she said to someone, yeah, we were arguing about something, and then, but then he told me, I had to just trust him because I have memory problems. That sets off alarms. The brain's going to go, oh my God, what an asshole, what a manipulator, blah, blah. But in this case, it actually does matter whether or not it's true. One, it matters, does she actually often have memory problems? And then two, it matters, did the thing actually happen? Now, does she have memory problems? That's easy to know. And whoever she's talking to probably knows that she does. But the other thing, did it actually happen? That's going to be harder to know. But it still has to matter whether or not it actually happened. So which means that we can't judge the statement if we don't know whether or not it actually happened. And we have to just make a choice based on other instances. Has this person demonstrated in the past, this deceit of some kind? And then if he hasn't, okay, then we can trust maybe that the truth is that the thing that he's claiming happened did happen, in which case the truth is that not an asshole manipulator. But you see, that's complicated. And so the easiest thing is just when you hear certain things, friend zone, stop talking, whatever. It's just easier to assign reactions to those. It's just easier for evolution to assign reactions to those triggers rather than fuck this.